Hello and welcome to Indus News live from Islamabad. I am Muneeb Hamid with the news of this hour. Let's begin with the headlines first. Pakistan and some other South and Central Asian countries are celebrating Eid al-Adha with religious fervour today. Pakistan's President Arif Alvi urged the nation to celebrate the day at home amid the pandemic. In his message, Prime Minister Imran Khan said, "The day reminds us that no problems can be resolved without great sacrifices." Muslims offer special prayers, sacrifice animals and distribute their meat among the less privileged on the 10th of the lunar month of Zil-Hajj. At least 16 people have been killed in flash floods following torrential rains in Afghanistan's eastern Nangarhar province. A spokesperson for Nangarhar governor says 4 others were injured and dozens of houses have been damaged. India has reported yet another record number of COVID-19 daily cases with over 57,000 testing positive in the last 24 hours. The country's death tally has risen by 764 to over 36,000 with nearly 1.7 million cases. In Pakistan, the death count has reached 5,951 with over 278,000 confirmed cases. Meanwhile, Mexico has overtaken the United Kingdom to log the world's third highest COVID-19 death toll of 46,688. The worldwide number of COVID-19 deaths has exceeded 678,000 with over 17.5 million infections. Russia says it will start mass COVID-19 vaccination in October. Health Minister Mikhail Murashko says doctors and teachers will be first to be vaccinated. Earlier, Russian Direct Investment Fund head Kirill Dmitriev said the vaccine has created immunity in 100% of volunteers. And in the U.S. National Basketball Association, the San Antonio Spurs beat the Sacramento Kings 129-120 at the Visa Athletic Center near Orlando. DeMar DeRozan scored 27 points and added 10 assists as the Spurs finished with a flurry in their first game after the league suspension due to COVID-19. News in detail after a short break. Stay tuned. Welcome back now for the news in detail. Pakistan and some other South and Central Asian countries are celebrating Eid al-Adha with religious fervour today. In a tweet to wish Eid, Pakistan's President Arif Alvi urged the nation to celebrate the day at home amid the pandemic. In his message, Prime Minister Imran Khan said, "The day reminds us that no problems can be resolved without great sacrifices." Muslims offer special prayers, sacrifice animals and distribute their meat among the less privileged on the 10th of the lunar month of Zil-Hajj. This year, Muslims are faced with unusual circumstances due to COVID-19 as they are unable to hold large gatherings in mosques. Smaller gatherings following strict protective measures were held in numerous countries, including Kyrgyzstan, Afghanistan, Bangladesh and India. Worshippers wore face masks while offering prayers and, in place of hugs, relied on elbow taps and waves. Now, the US has imposed sanctions on a Chinese government entity and 2 officials, accusing them of human rights abuses. The Treasury Department identified the company as the Xinjiang Production and Construction Corp. It said former party secretary of XPCC Sun Jinlong and deputy party secretary Peng Jiarui have also been blacklisted. This comes a week after the US closed the Chinese consulate in Houston, with Beijing retaliating by shuttering Washington's consulate in Chengdu. The Treasury also issued a license to block XPCC subsidiaries until September 30th. President Donald Trump says the U.S. is working on a new nuclear non-proliferation treaty with Russia. Speaking in Florida, Trump said it will be great if Washington and Moscow can reach an agreement soon. In July, Russia and the U.S. held consultations on arms control and disarmament. The only arms control treaty between the two countries, the New START, is set to expire in 6 months. That agreement jots down details of the amount of nuclear weapons each party can hold. Russian President Vladimir Putin has warned of a fierce arms race if this treaty ends. Meanwhile, Russia says it will respond to the European Union's travel and financial sanctions against its military in a reciprocal manner. In a statement, the Foreign Ministry said the curbs are politically motivated. It urged the EU to abandon its attempts to exert pressure and develop effective rules for preventing conflicts in cyberspace. The bloc accused the Russian intelligence service of carrying out cyber against European citizens and businesses. The EU also imposed sanctions on firms from North Korea and China over their role in cyber attacks across the world. Now, the US will deploy 1,000 soldiers in Poland after the two sides sign a deal for military cooperation. In a statement, Polish Defense Minister Mariusz Blaszczak said they will have an American command in Poland. He said it will be the most important center for ground forces in the region. Poland currently hosts a rotating contingent of over 4,000 American troops. This comes after the US announced its plan to withdraw about 12,000 troops from Germany. Meanwhile, Mexico has overtaken the UK to log the world's third highest COVID-19 death toll of 46,688. In the United States, more than 60,000 people have tested positive for the virus and over 1,300 lost their lives in the last 24 hours. The worldwide number of COVID-19 deaths has exceeded 679,000 with over 17.5 million infections. This report has more details.
The new coronavirus is ravaging the Americas, dashing all hopes of reopening the economy anytime soon. The U.S. reported almost 25,000 deaths in July alone, while the country's overall death count has exceeded 153,000, with nearly 4.6 million cases. Peru has prolonged its lockdown to over half of its regions after registering the highest daily number of new infections since late May. Meanwhile, Mexico has registered 688 additional deaths and a record 8,458 new cases.
If we've overtaken them, it's going to be even harder to diminish this pandemic that's hitting us hard. We have to protect ourselves as much as possible to avoid spreading it from one person to the next.
Europe is gripped by fear as Spain reports the second day of 1,000 plus coronavirus infections, the highest since the nation lifted its lockdown in June. Over in the UK, lockdown measures have been reimposed in Northern England following a surge in cases.
Today, I'm afraid we're postponing those changes for at least a fortnight. That means until the 15th of August at the earliest, casinos, bowling alleys, skating rinks and the remaining close contact services must remain closed. Indoor performances will not resume. Pilots of larger crowds in sports venues and conference centres will not take place, and wedding receptions of up to 30 people will not be permitted.
Australia's second most populous state, Victoria, has reported close to 400 infections in the last 24 hours and 3 deaths. In mainland China, 45 more have contracted the virus, down from 127 the day before. South Korea, meanwhile, has seen another jump as it reports 31 new cases, up from 18 yesterday.
India has recorded the steepest spike of over 57,000 cases in a day, taking the toll to almost 1.7 million. Health Ministry says in July alone 1.1 million people contracted the virus. It said 764 more died overnight, raising the death toll to over 36,500. The ministry said cinema halls, entertainment parks, bars, theatres and other social gathering places will remain closed till August 31st. US Special Inspector General for Afghanistan Reconstruction says the country is headed for a humanitarian disaster. In its recent report, the US watchdog said Afghanistan lacks required medical equipment to treat COVID-19 patients as the virus continues to spread. It said the pandemic is pushing millions more Afghans into poverty as 32 million people face food insecurity. The report said only 300 functional ventilators are available in the country. It also predicted that Afghanistan has likely entered the recession with the economy set to shrink 3 to 10% in 2020. Afghanistan's Ministry of Public Health has reported at least 37,000 new COVID-19 cases and over 1,270 deaths. Now, a soldier in the Eastern Democratic Republic of Congo has shot dead at least 12 people and wounded 9 in a drunken rampage. Governor of the province, Theo Kasi, said authorities are still looking for the gunman. The protesters blocked the highway, displaying 12 bodies wrapped in funeral shrouds. Military spokesperson Captain Diodone Kasireka said an army delegation and a UN team is in the area to calm the protesters and negotiate with them. Now over to Zimbabwe, where the security forces have cleared people off streets and forced shops to close in the country's capital, Harare. The decision has been taken a day before planned anti-government protests during the worst economic crisis in more than a decade. Activists have called for street rallies across the country over corruption in the government and economic hardships. Earlier, Zimbabwe's President Mnangagwa said the protests will constitute a rebellion by the opposition. In central Harare, anti-riot police patrolled on foot and in trucks, telling people to leave. Many people were killed during a crackdown on the last major anti-government protest in January 2019. The UK and France say they have intercepted a record number of migrants attempting to cross the English Channel over the past 2 days. British authorities said 202 migrants were intercepted by UK border forces in 19 separate incidents, while France rescued 25 migrants during 2 operations. France's maritime prefecture said that it rescued an additional 58 migrants today morning. This beats the previous record established earlier this year when 220 migrants were rescued over a 48-hour period. The migrants were primarily citizens of Yemen, Iran, Sudan, Iraq, Eritrea, Kuwait, Egypt, Chad and Mali. Russia says it will start mass COVID-19 vaccination in October. Health Minister Mikhail Murashko says doctors and teachers will be the first to get vaccinated. Earlier, Russian Direct Investment Fund head Kirill Dmitriev said the vaccine has created immunity in 100% of volunteers. Dmitriev said as many as 20 countries are interested in buying the vaccine. He said 5 countries are planning to take part in the production of the Russian-developed vaccine. Now, China has rejected the U.S. allegations of hacking its government-targeted biotech firm Moderna to steal data about the coronavirus vaccine. In a briefing, Foreign Ministry spokesman Wang Wenbin said the U.S. accusations are baseless and lack evidence. He said Beijing does not engage in technology theft. Wang said China is leading the world in vaccine development for COVID-19. He said Beijing is more concerned about the use of hackers to steal Chinese technology by certain countries. Earlier, the U.S. indicted 2 Chinese nationals for allegedly hacking defense contractors and coronavirus researchers. More news coming up after a short break. Stay tuned. Welcome back now. A U.S. Marine has died while 8 more are missing after an amphibious assault vehicle sank in deep water off the California coast. In a statement, the U.S. Marine Corps said 15 Marines and 1 sailor were inside the vehicle for training exercises. It said 2 of the 7 Marines who have survived the accident are in the intensive care. The Pentagon says the fate of 7 Marines and a sailor remains unknown after 24 hours of rescue operations involving multiple aircrafts and boats. Meanwhile, 7 people, including a U.S. lawmaker, have been killed in a mid-air plane collision in Alaska. In a statement, Alaska state troopers said there were no survivors. It said a Republican state lawmaker, Gary Knopp, was piloting one of the aircraft. Troopers said the other plane was carrying 4 tourists, a guide and a pilot. The Federal Aviation Administration and National Transportation Safety Board say they are investigating the incident. The U.S. Department of Justice has charged 3 persons in the celebrity Twitter account's hacking case. The hacked accounts included former President Barack Obama, billionaire Bill Gates, and Tesla chief executive Elon Musk. The FBI said Mason Shepard has been charged with the conspiracy to commit wire fraud, commit money laundering, and the intentional access of a protected computer, while Dima Fazeli was charged for aiding and abetting. Details about the third individual were not released by U.S. officials because he is a minor. In a statement, Twitter said it appreciated the swift action of law enforcement. The hack was carried out after stealing the credentials of Twitter employees with access to internal systems. Meanwhile, at least 16 people have been killed in flash floods following torrential rains in Afghanistan's eastern Nangarhar province. A spokesperson for Nangarhar governor says 4 others have been injured. He said victims included 15 children and a woman. The spokesperson said all 16 were killed in the Khuz Kunar district of the province. He added dozens of houses have been damaged in floods. A farmer in eastern India has found a unique yellow turtle which experts say is the product of albinism. He spotted the turtle while working in his fields in the village of Sujanpur in Odisha's Balasore district. The turtle has been handed over to forest officials who called in conservation experts. This one is an adult believed to be between 1.5 and 2 years old. A Syrian artist finds solace in making mosaics of prison memories to not forget Bashar al-Assad's regime tortures in Aleppo's Aziz district. More in this report.
Mosaic artist Abdul Razak Tawal remained in prison for 6 years in Damascus. He has started reflecting the torture memories with mosaic stones. Tawal has everything in his mind, like the moments of interrogation, friends, and torture.
I saved everything in my mind, like moments of interrogation, friends, and torture. Now I paint everything I remember. I also picture prisoners who died under torture.
Only a small number of victims dare to share their experiences after being released. Tawal got his freedom from prison in June 2019. He says he paints everything he remembers, even the pictures of those prisoners who died due to torture.
I made a portrait of the cruel that tortured me so much that I couldn't have a child and caused my 2 friends dead. I can't take out of my mind the picture of him wearing glasses on his face and having a cigar in his mouth, as well as I can't forget his torture.
According to rights organizations, hundreds of thousands are currently held in the prisons and interrogation centers of Assad regime.
Against a backdrop of an 18th century castle, singer Evelyn Zoe bowed amidst water lilies as pianist Cecilia Waters played classics on her floating piano. More about this unique show in this report.
The French band Piano Dulac feared for the worst this year, unsure when they would perform again after the COVID-19 lockdown forced them to cancel 2 tours. But the group made a gamble this summer season and started touring mid-July to masked and socially distant audience. Jean-François Marquis, the owner of the Riqueberg Castle in northern France, welcomed the group for a 2-night run of their show Melting Flottaire to show his support.
This year, we are welcoming the Piano Dulac once more, whom we decided to support during this difficult period. So we are welcoming them here at Riqueberg Castle. There are a lot of health safety rules to observe, but if we don't support the artist, what will happen to them?
The band member Waters aims to bring classical music to the countryside, where the concert halls are not widespread, and gained a stronger audience this time.
I think there is an ambience that is, well, not electric, but as for me, I'm so moved this year, much more than the other years, to see an audience in front of me who came despite the situation.
The French government has extended income support for the arts and culture industry and acknowledged their difficulties amid COVID-19 pandemic.
President Donald Trump has announced he is banning the Chinese-owned video sharing app TikTok in the United States. He said he can sign an executive order as early as today. U.S. security officials have expressed concern that the app owned by Chinese firm ByteDance can be used to collect the personal data of Americans. The fast-growing app has up to 80 million active monthly users in America, and the ban will be a major blow for ByteDance. TikTok spokesperson Hillary McQuaid said the company was confident for the success of the app in the long run. The step comes amid growing friction between Washington and Beijing over COVID-19 handling, South China Sea and trade tariffs. Britain and the EU have agreed to continue discussing a free trade deal until October 2nd. In a tweet, UK's chief negotiator David Frost said talks will take place next month, 2 months, with a round each in Brussels and London. Britain left the bloc on the 31st of January, but there has been little progress on defining a new trade relationship. Fisheries and other rules on trade competition have been the most difficult areas during the negotiations. In the U.S. National Basketball Association, the San Antonio Spurs beat the Sacramento Kings 129-120 at the Visa Athletic Center near Orlando. San Antonio started the game with the hot hand, building a 16-point lead before setting for a 43-30 advantage at the end of the first quarter. The Kings roared back eventually with a 65-64 lead at intermission. DeMar DeRozan scored 27 points and added 10 assists as the Spurs finished with a flurry. This was Spurs' first game after the league's suspension due to COVID-19. Well, that's all for now. For the latest updates, you can follow us on social media at Indus.News. Take care.